Her reflection stared back at her from the glass, the blue uniform of the United Earth Defense Force crisp against the fading light. The small silver pin on her collar, shaped like the distinctive four-winged ships of their saviors, caught the sunlight. A soft tone sounded behind her. "Commander, the council is assembled," said her aide, Lieutenant Doyen. Ju-woo nodded. "Thank you, Lieutenant." The council chamber was a circular room with seats arranged in rising tiers like an ancient amphitheater. In the center stood a holographic platform, currently dark. Representatives from Earth's 7 governing regions sat in tense silence as Ju-woo took her place. "Transmission incoming," announced the system. "Origin. Valkyrie Central Authority." The hologram flickered to life. The alien that appeared was tall and slender, with silvery scales covering its form. 4 pupilless eyes, deep violet in color, dominated a face that had no nose or mouth as humans would recognize them. Instead, a series of gill-like structures vibrated when it spoke. "Greetings to the human council," the Valkyrie said, its voice translated to a resonant tone. "I am High Representative Sen of the Valkyrie Conclave." President Min-ji-yoon rose from her seat. "Greetings, High Representative. This is an unexpected honor." The alien made a gesture with its 6-fingered hand. "I speak today of ancient matters, of debts and their payment." Ju-woo felt her heart rate increase. Every human child learned the story. When Earth teetered on the brink of destruction, the Valkyrie had appeared with technology to cleanse the poisoned atmosphere, stabilize the dying oceans, and provided the energy sources that allowed humanity to rebuild. In return, they asked for nothing but a debt of gratitude, to be repaid when needed. 3 centuries ago, we extended aid to your dying world. Sen continued. Today, we invoke the debt. A murmur ran through the council chamber. The terms of our agreement were clear, Sen said. We ask now for your assistance. President Yoon nodded slowly. The people of Earth honor their agreements, High Representative. What form of assistance do you require? That will be discussed in person, Sen replied. We request the presence of a high-ranking military official at Neutral Station Alpha 7 in 3 standard days. All eyes turned to Ju-woo. Commander Park will represent Earth's military, President Yoon said without hesitation. The transmission ended, leaving the chamber in silence. Later, in Admiral Taho Kim's office, Ju-woo paced while her superior studied star charts. We always knew this day would come, Taho said. What we never expected was how much we would change in the meantime. Ju-woo stopped at the large map showing human expansion. From a single damaged planet, humanity had spread to Mars, Venus, and the moons of Jupiter. Small but determined, they had built a space fleet that, while not the largest, was perhaps the most innovative in the sector. The Valkyries saved us when we could not save ourselves, Ju-woo said softly. Whatever they need, we owe them everything. Taho looked up, his weathered face serious. And yet, they'd been largely absent for centuries. They saved us, then retreated to their territory. What has drawn them out now? Something they can't handle alone, Ju-woo suggested. Precisely what worries me. Taho stood and walked to a cabinet, removing a sealed data core. This contains all our intelligence on current galactic threats. Study it before your meeting. 2 days later, aboard her ship the Resilience, Ju-woo reviewed the data again. Reports of increased activity from the Carthan swarm troubled her most, a hive-minded species that consumed resources from entire planets, leaving them barren. Commander, her communications officer called. We're receiving a priority message from Earth. The message was brief. A Valkyrie outpost had gone silent. The last transmission mentioned countless ships, moving as one. As the Resilience approached the neutral station, Ju-woo looked out at the stars. Humanity had nearly destroyed itself once before finding a second chance. Now those who had given that chance needed help. Set condition yellow throughout the ship, she ordered. And prepare my shuttle. Whatever debt was about to be called in, she knew humanity would pay it in full. The neutral station hung in space like a silver needle against the black velvet of the cosmos. As Commander Ju Park's shuttle approached, she noted the unusual number of ships docked at the station. Representatives from at least 6 different species had arrived to observe the meeting. "They're curious," said Lieutenant Doyun, noticing her gaze. "The Valkyrie rarely request anything." Inside the station, corridors curved in graceful arcs unfamiliar to human architecture. The air carried a faint scent of something like cinnamon, though no human had ever tasted the alien spice it resembled. Guards from various species stood at attention, watching the small human delegation pass. The meeting chamber was a perfect sphere, with a circular table at its center. Ambassador Ran of the Valkyrie Conclave waited there, taller than Ju remembered from recordings. The ambassador's scaled skin rippled with colors that shifted from silver to deep purple as they moved. "Commander Park," Ran said, the translator rendering the gill vibrations into smooth speech. "Thank you for coming so quickly." Ju bowed slightly. "Earth honors its promises, Ambassador." They sat across from each other. 2 assistants flanked the Valkyrie, while Ju had brought only Lieutenant Doyun. 3 centuries is but a moment to my species," Ran began. "Yet in that time, your kind has spread to multiple worlds and developed remarkably. We have watched with interest." "We had good teachers," Ju replied diplomatically. "Indeed." The ambassador's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "Now we face a threat that even the Valkyrie cannot overcome alone." With a gesture, Ran activated a holographic display. Planets appeared, once thriving Valkyrie colonies reduced to barren rock. "The Carthan swarm has emerged from deep space," explained Ran. "They consume everything: minerals, vegetation, even atmosphere. 3 of our outer worlds have been lost." Ju studied the images carefully. "Our intelligence noted swarm movement, but not attacks of this scale." "They move quickly," said Ran. "The swarm operates as a single entity across thousands of ships. Against such numbers, even Valkyrie technology falters." Doyun leaned forward. "What exactly are you requesting of Earth, Ambassador?" "We had hoped for sanctuary for our refugees, perhaps some resources to help us rebuild elsewhere." Ran's gill structures fluttered, a sign of discomfort. "We know humans are still growing as a galactic power. We would not ask for military intervention." Ju exchanged a glance with Doyun. This was unexpected. The Valkyrie, among the oldest species in known space, were essentially accepting defeat. "Ambassador," Ju said slowly, "humanity offers our full military commitment. We will defend Valkyrie space." Silence filled the chamber. Ran's 4 eyes blinked rapidly, their color shifting to bright azure. Surprise, if Ju remembered her briefings correctly. "Your species numbers merely in billions," Ran said finally. "The swarm is countless. This is not what we expected when we called in our debt." Ju stood, walking to the holographic display. She studied the patterns of the swarm attacks. "Numbers aren't everything," she replied. "After you saved us, we were few with limited resources. We learned to fight differently, to use what we had more effectively." She manipulated the display, highlighting weak points in the swarm's formation that the Valkyrie had missed. "They may be countless, but they move as one mind. That creates predictability." From an observation deck above, representatives of other species watched with interest. A blue-skinned Ultan leaned toward a crystalline Drevashi. "The humans are overconfident," the Ultan whispered. "They'll be destroyed." The Drevashi's crystal form chimed softly. "Perhaps, or perhaps they know something we don't." Back in the chamber, Ran had risen to full height, nearly 2 meters tall. "You would risk extinction for a debt?" the ambassador asked. Ju shook her head. "Not just for a debt, for allies who once saved us when no one else would." She activated her datapad, sending tactical assessments to the holographic display. "Earth has been developing countermeasures against hive mind systems for decades. We've faced similar threats in our own expansion, albeit on a smaller scale." Doyun added, "Our ships are smaller but faster and more maneuverable than the swarms. We've already analyzed their attack patterns from your data. Ambassador Rand studied the humans with new interest. You came prepared for this. We came prepared to help. Ju corrected, whatever form it took. The ambassador's scales shifted to a deep gold, a color Ju had never seen in her briefings. In 3 centuries, we have watched humanity grow from a wounded species to one that stands before us as equals, Rand said. We accept your offer, Commander Park. The Valkyrie and humans will face the swarm together. As they left the chamber, Do-Yun whispered, Admiral Kim predicted they would expect only token support. Ju nodded, watching as the news spread among the observing aliens. Their expressions ranged from shock to disbelief to calculation. Humanity always repays its debts in full, she said. Let the galaxy remember that. The command center of the Valkyrie orbital station hummed with activity as Fleet Admiral Yunjin Baek studied the tactical display. Streams of data flowed across holographic screens, tracking the movement of human ships entering Valkyrie space. Third Fleet has cleared the jump point, reported Captain Minja Lee, her second in command. All vessels report green status. Yunjin nodded, her experienced eyes noting the small markers representing observer ships from other species hovering at the edges of the system. The Ultan, the Dravashi, even the normally reclusive Gorlath had sent vessels to watch. They think we're fools, Minja said, following her gaze. Let them, Yunjin replied. Underestimation is an advantage we can use. Across the room, raised voices drew their attention. Valkyrie Fleet Commander Thil, his scales rippling with agitation, argued with a group of his officers while pointing at a simulation of battle formations. These humans suggest we abandon conventional formation tactics we have refined over 10,000 years. His gill structures fluttered rapidly. Preposterous. Yunjin exchanged a glance with Minja before approaching the group. The Valkyrie fell silent as the human admiral neared, their 4 eyes blinking in that distinctive sequential pattern. Fleet Commander, Yunjin said respectfully, perhaps I might explain our reasoning. Thil's scales settled into a polite blue-gray. Admiral Baek, your species shows great courage, but the swarm has destroyed civilizations far more advanced than yours. Yunjin activated a nearby display, bringing up Earth's historical records. 300 years ago, humanity faced extinction with conventional thinking. We survived by adaptation. The display showed humanity's rebuilt cities, their restored oceans. Perhaps your species might benefit from the same. She gestured to the tactical display. The swarm expects you to respond as you always have, with your powerful but predictable defensive formations. What if instead we did this? Her fingers moved across the controls, showing smaller Valkyrie ships partnered with human vessels in irregular patterns, using the larger Valkyrie cruisers as anchors rather than frontline combatants. A hunting pack rather than a wall of shields, Phil observed, his tone skeptical but interested. Precisely, Yunjin confirmed. On the far side of the station, Commander Ju Park supervised the installation of human communication systems into Valkyrie vessels. Engineers from both species worked side by side, occasionally stopping to solve translation issues. Their technology is still more advanced than ours in many ways, noted Lieutenant Do-Yun, as a Valkyrie engineer effortlessly reconfigured a power coupling that would have taken a human team hours to modify. Yes, but they've grown predictable, Ju replied quietly. They haven't faced an existential threat in millennia. We face them constantly. A young Valkyrie approach, holding a modified neural interface. Commander Park, we have adapted your hive disruption technology as requested, but our scientists have questions about its implementation. Ju smiled. Have them meet me in Lab 3 in 1 hour. We'll walk through it together. As the Valkyrie left, Do-Yun looked thoughtful. They're beginning to trust us. Trust will win this war as much as technology, Ju observed. In the station's massive docking bay, human shuttles delivered specialized equipment, while mechanics worked to modify engines and weapon systems. Captain Junho Kang supervised the loading of experimental nanite containers into launch tubes designed to penetrate the swarm's bioships. Careful with those, he called to a team handling a particularly volatile container. They're programmed to disrupt neural pathways. One breach could affect everyone in this bay. A Valkyrie observer approached him, her scales a curious shade of green. Your species developed these to fight the swarm specifically. Junho shook his head. We developed them years ago to combat a neural parasite in our Jupiter colonies. We've reprogrammed them for the swarm's biology. Adaptation, the Valkyrie said, repeating the word human officers had used frequently. Your species excels at it. When you're small, you learn to be clever, Junho replied with a smile. As night cycle began on the station, Admiral Dungeon met with Valkyrie High Command. The atmosphere was tense but respectful. The swarm will reach the Helios Narrows in 3 days, Fleet Commander Phil announced. It's the last defensible position before they reach our inner colonies. Yunjin studied the star chart. Then we make our stand there. Commander Hyunwoo's battle group is our fastest. They can reach it first and prepare the trap. A small force against the main swarm, questioned one of the Valkyrie admirals. They would be sacrificed. No, Yunjin said firmly. They would be the bait, and the swarm would learn that sometimes the smallest prey has the sharpest teeth. As the meeting concluded, news arrived from the outer scouts. The swarm had accelerated. They would reach the Narrows sooner than expected. Send the orders, Yunjin told Minja. All ships to battle stations. It begins. The vastness of space at the Helios Narrows seemed peaceful at first glance. Huge gas clouds painted in purple and blue stretched between 2 dense star clusters. This natural choke point was where Commander Hyunwoo Choi had positioned his small fleet, 20 human vessels and 15 Valkyrie ships, hiding among asteroid fields and nebula clouds. Swarm scouts entering sensor range, reported his tactical officer, her voice steady despite the tension on the bridge. Hyunwoo nodded, watching as the first wave of bioships appeared on the display. They moved in perfect synchronization, like a school of fish, their organic hulls pulsing with internal light. Hold positions, he ordered. Let them come deeper into the Narrows. Across the fleet, crews waited in silence. The human ships, smaller and more maneuverable than their Valkyrie allies, carried specialized weapons designed specifically for this encounter. The Valkyrie vessels, with their superior shielding, would provide cover for the surgical strikes to come. Main swarm formation detected, announced the sensor officer. Count exceeds 500 vessels. Seeing the massive enemy force, a young Valkyrie officer aboard Hyunwoo's ship shifted nervously. There are too many, he whispered. Numbers aren't everything in space combat. Hyunwoo replied calmly. Position is power. When the swarm reached the center of the Narrows, Hyunwoo gave the signal. Execute Phase 1. Throughout the hidden fleet, engines flared to life. Human ships darted from their hiding places, moving in unpredictable patterns that confused the swarm's hive-mind targeting systems. They struck quickly, their specialized energy weapons cutting through the biological hulls before retreating. Commander Ju Park stood at the tall windows of Earth Central Command, watching the sunset paint the rebuilt skyline of New Seoul in shades of gold and amber. 300 years had passed since the Great Collapse, since humanity had nearly wiped itself out through environmental destruction and resource wars. 300 years since the Valkyrie had arrived. The swarm responded immediately, shifting formation to pursue, but the human vessels were already gone, disappearing into the nebula clouds only to emerge elsewhere for another strike. On the command ship, Ju Park monitored the battle from a tactical display. The Valkyrie ships had now emerged, their powerful weapons creating a barrier that forced the swarm into narrower channels. They're adapting, observed Admiral Dungeon. The hive mind is learning our patterns. Then it's time for Phase 2, Ju decided. Launch the nanocarriers. Throughout the battlefield, small projectiles launched from human ships. Too small to trigger the swarm's defensive responses, they penetrated the organic hulls of the largest vessels. Inside, specialized nanites began disrupting the neural pathways that connected the swarm's hive mind. Confusion spread through the enemy fleet. Bioships began moving erratically, some colliding with each other as their coordinated movements faltered. "It's working," Minja reported from her station. "Swarm coordination is down 30% and falling." But the victory was short-lived. A second wave of swarm ships appeared, larger than the first. These new arrivals moved differently, more cautiously, as if the hive mind had already adapted to the nanite attack. "They're faster learners than we expected," Hanmu reported as his ship narrowly avoided a barrage of energy fire. Across the battlefield, human and Valkyrie ships took damage. 3 vessels exploded in brilliant flashes as swarm weapons found their marks. "We need to protect the civilian evacuation ships," Zhuwu reminded the fleet commanders. "They're still moving through the far side of the Narrows." Hyunwoo's voice came through clearly on the command channel. "My battle group will hold this position. Get the civilians through the jump point." Admiral Gunjin frowned. "Commander, that's a suicide mission. The swarm will overwhelm your position in minutes." "Then we'll give you minutes," Hanmu replied simply. "That's all the evacuees need." On his ship, Hyunwoo turned to his crew. "New formation. Interlocking shield pattern with the Valkyrie vessels. We're going to show these creatures what happens when they threaten our allies." The small defensive fleet reorganized, forming a barrier across the narrowest point of the stellar passage. Human ships darted between the larger Valkyrie vessels, their point defense systems working in perfect coordination to intercept swarm projectiles. "They're holding," Minja said with disbelief as she watched the tactical display. "That small fleet is actually holding against the main swarm force." Zhuwu nodded. "That's because they're not fighting as humans or Valkyrie anymore. They're fighting as one." The battle reached its peak as Hyunwoo's flagship took critical damage, its engines flaring with emergency power. Still, it maintained position, covering the retreat of a damaged Valkyrie cruiser. "Last civilian transport clearing the jump point," reported the communications officer. At that moment, the combined human-Valkyrie fleet executed their final strategy. A specially modified energy pulse, developed by joining human nanite technology with Valkyrie power systems, emitted from multiple ships simultaneously. The pulse washed through the swarm fleet, temporarily severing all neural connections between the bioships. For precious moments, the mighty swarm became nothing more than individual vessels, confused and uncoordinated. "Fall back," Hyunwoo ordered his battered fleet. Mission accomplished. As the defending ships retreated through the jump point, the last images from their sensors showed the swarm in disarray. Still dangerous, but no longer the perfectly coordinated force it had been. The Battle of Helios Narrows was over. And for the first time, the Carthan swarm had been forced to retreat. The Central Council chamber on Earth gleamed with polished stone and glass, sunlight streaming through tall windows to illuminate representatives from every human colony. 6 weeks had passed since the Battle of Helios Narrows, and today marked the formal conclusion of what media had taken to calling the Dead War. Commander Zhuwu Park stood at attention beside Admiral Gunjin Baek, both wearing dress uniforms adorned with new medals, the Star of Valkyrie, an honor never before granted to non-Valkyrie species. Commander Hyunwoo Choi was noticeably absent. He remained in a medical facility, recovering from injuries sustained during the battle. The chamber doors opened. Valkyrie High Elder Mev entered, flanked by an honor guard whose scales shimmered in ceremonial patterns of gold and silver. Behind them walked representatives from a dozen alien civilizations, many who had previously shown little interest in human affairs. President Sun Hee Kang rose to receive the Valkyrie delegation. "High Elder, we welcome you to Earth." Mev's 4 eyes surveyed the chamber slowly. Unlike most Valkyrie, the High Elder's scales were pale, almost white with age. When Mev spoke, the translator rendered a voice deeper and more resonant than typical. 3 centuries is but a moment to my kind," Mev began. I was present when we first discovered your world, teetering on the edge of self-destruction. I approved the mission to save your species." Murmurs spread through the human delegation. Few had realized they were in the presence of one who had witnessed humanity's darkest hour. "At that time, we asked for a debt of gratitude," Nev continued. "A promise to be called upon when needed. Some among my people believed such a debt from a primitive species would prove worthless." The elder's gaze fell on Jiwoo and Yunjin. How wrong they were. From within ornate robes, Mev produced a crystalline orb that glowed with inner light. The Valkyrie delegation straightened, recognizing an object of profound significance. "This is the sphere of obligation," Mev explained. "It records debts between civilizations. Only 3 times in our history have we used it." The High Elder approached President Kang, extending the orb. "We saved your species once," Mev intoned formally. "You have now saved ours. The debt is repaid." As Sunny accepted the sphere, it flared brilliantly before fading to clear crystal. The record erased, the obligation fulfilled. "The people of Earth were honored to help our friends," Sunny replied, bowing slightly in the Valkyrie manner. Across the chamber, representatives from other species watched with new expressions: respect, calculation, even traces of fear. The Dravashi ambassador, a crystalline being who had previously dismissed humans as upstart primates, now studied them with obvious reassessment. Later that evening, a reception was held in the Orbital Gardens, Earth's magnificent space station that showcased restored plants from around the planet. Jiwoo found herself approached by an Ultan diplomat whose blue skin contrasted sharply with formal white robes. "Commander Park," the Ultan said, bowing slightly. "My government wishes to discuss a defensive alliance with Earth." Jiwoo raised an eyebrow. "The same government that refused trade negotiations last year." "Circumstances change," the diplomat replied smoothly, "as does our understanding of potential allies." Similar conversations occurred throughout the reception. Species that had previously ignored humanity now sought agreements, treaties, and alliances. As the evening wound down, Jiwoo joined Admiral Unjin at a viewport overlooking Earth. 7 diplomatic requests today alone, Yunjin noted, sipping a drink. The Ultan, the Dravashi, even the Gorlath want to open formal relations. "We entered galactic society as debtors," Jiwoo observed. "Now we stand as equals, perhaps even more." A message flashed on Jiwoo's communication device, a medical update. She smiled as she read it. "Hyunwoo is awake. Doctors say he'll make a full recovery." Lunjin nodded with satisfaction. "Good. The fleet needs commanders like him." "The fleet is expanding," Jiwoo noted. "After seeing what our ships could do, the Council approved the new defense budget. We'll have twice as many vessels by next year." They stood in comfortable silence, watching their blue planet turn slowly beneath them. In the distance, construction lights marked where the first Valkyrie embassy was being built, no longer mere allies of convenience, but true friends. "Do you think they'll come back?" Unjin asked eventually. "The swarm." "Perhaps," Jiwoo answered, "but they'll find us ready. And this time, we won't be fighting alone." Below them, Earth continued its eternal dance around the sun, once nearly destroyed by human hands, saved by alien intervention, and now home to a civilization that had proven itself on the galactic stage. In the darkness of space, humanity's light burned brighter than ever before, not just as debtors who had fulfilled their obligation, but as a species that had shown it would fight to the last ship for those it called friends. And that, the galaxy had learned, made humans the most dangerous allies of all.